Hi everyone, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton here with our weekly update for Judicial Watch on your social media platforms, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, etc. Thanks for joining us this busy corruption week or anti-corruption week. Those of you who don't know, Judicial Watch is a nonpartisan corruption watchdog or anti-corruption watchdog that goes after politicians of both political parties and really does the job of both Congress, the media, and the executive branch these days in terms of providing oversight and accountability under the rule of law. So much so that even the President of the United States is following our work. In fact, he retweeted a key story that Judicial Watch is pursuing, which I'll talk to you about. Also some big news on FBI corruption, which is related to the various issues we're talking about with Hillary Clinton and the Russia scandal. And then on top of that, we've got some great news to tell you about our sanctuary lawsuit in San Francisco. It's a taxpayer lawsuit against the against the San Francisco Sheriff's Department that was allowed to go forward by a court the other day. So I'll tell you details about that. But first up is the big news about what the FBI has been doing or not doing, and the corruption of the FBI as it relates to the Hillary Clinton investigation and then the Russia investigations. Now, first up is the fact that we had gotten documents about the number 2 official at the FBI, Andrew McCabe. Now, who's Andrew McCabe? Well, he's an important guy. He used to run the Washington field office for the FBI, and then he was elevated by James Comey, the former FBI director, to the number 2 position. So he's in a power position there. The problem is he's compromised. And there have been reports, all confirmed, that his wife ran for, it's obviously a public record, ran for public office in a state, I guess it was a state Senate seat race in Virginia. And she was recruited supposedly by Terry McAuliffe, the governor of Virginia. And Terry McAuliffe is a good friend of Hillary Clinton and also unethical. Now, McAuliffe gave McCabe's wife, I think $500,000. I think the Democratic Party gave them another $200,000, the local Democratic Party, all of which is controlled by McAuliffe. And I think it was like 40% of her campaign war chest was provided to her by McAuliffe. It's a great country. She's free to run for office. But the problem is her husband was a senior FBI official that was allegedly investigating Mr. McAuliffe himself, and then obviously Hillary Clinton, McAuliffe's friend. But McCabe didn't recuse himself from either investigation, it looks like. Now, Judicial Watch sued for documents about this corruption scandal, and a few weeks ago we received documents about Andrew McCabe's failure to recuse himself. Well, actually, he did recuse himself. He recused himself a week before the November elections last year, after it was the Clinton emails investigation was ended. So how's that? But we also received a new batch of documents showing that Director Comey at the time approved of his compromised position. According to the document, McCabe had consulted with Comey and Comey said he was okay with it. So, you know, if you're doing an ethics check in an agency, you don't get to walk into the head of the agency and say, hey, look, my wife is running for office in Virginia. Is that okay that I stay on these cases? Now, that's not the way it works. But in Comey's FBI, the rules were thrown out the window. So these documents confirm that. And the documents also show, and we put on my glasses so I can see the paper here, that, McCabe, who the documents show was guiding the FBI response to his own scandal, had promised initially that he wouldn't use any FBI resources for his wife's campaign. Well, guess what? There are a bunch of emails showing him promoting his wife's campaign from his FBI account. So he was actively supporting his wife, who was running as, I think, a Democrat, I would presume as a Democrat, in Virginia, getting money from Terry McAuliffe, and no one in the FBI thought of that as a conflict of interest? Don't you believe it? And so I talked about this issue, I think on Fox and Friends on Sunday, and the president was watching, and he retweeted one of our tweets about this issue. And I'm glad at least someone in the Trump administration is paying attention to this corruption in the FBI. I don't know why Mr. McCabe is still at the number 2 at the FBI given this corruption. He's under investigation by the IG over his conflict of interest that I'm telling you about here. And I think generally speaking about how the FBI might have been corrupted in terms of protecting Hillary Clinton. Look, there's a real problem at the FBI. Now, on top of that, we have the news this week. It was leaked to the Washington Post and the New York Times last weekend that one of the top counterintelligence officials for the FBI, Peter Strzok, I think his name is pronounced, or Strokes, or something like that, was essentially sending texts to his adulterous girlfriend, or someone he was in an adulterous relationship with, who was also an FBI official. And what were the texts about? Slamming Trump and I guess supportive of Hillary Clinton. This FBI agent, by the way, is a key official investigating, or was one of the top people investigating Hillary Clinton during her email scandal. Also investigating Donald Trump over the Russia collusion scandal. And he's an anti-Trumper and a Hillary supporter. And so out of control, he thought he could text his person he was having a relationship with, improperly obviously, at the FBI. He's the one who, his name shows up in all the documents, by the way. He was involved in the interviews of Hillary Clinton. He, as a counter-intel official at the FBI, would have been involved in analyzing the mishandling of classified information by Hillary Clinton, and would have been involved, presumably, in the decision to grant immunity to everybody in the Clinton investigation. Remember all the get-out-of-jail-free cards they got? And certainly he would have been involved, and according to CNN, he was involved in a decision to exonerate Hillary Clinton, or not exonerate her, but the decision not to prosecute her issued by James Comey. In fact, watering down the language of James Comey's decision memo to protect her legally from any criticism. And then he's also involved in the Get Trump investigation. Oh wait, the Russia collusion investigation. So questions are, was he involved in a dossier? Was he involved in the FISA warrants and applications for FISA warrants targeting Donald Trump and his team? Was he involved in the General Flynn investigation? Supposedly he set up the ambush interview of General Flynn at the beginning of the Trump administration that led to his perjury plea deal the other day, or his false statement plea deal the other day. He pled guilty to lying to the FBI. What a scandal. And he was only removed from the Mueller, and then he's working at the Mueller investigation. And he's only removed from the Mueller investigation back in July. And we didn't know about it until just recently. So you had a cover-up by the Justice Department, Rod Rosenstein presumably, who's the number 2 at the Justice Department, supervising Mueller and running these day-to-day things, and Mr. Mueller himself. And I will say it, I've said it on everywhere, and I'll say it to you again. Both the Clinton email investigation and the Mueller investigation have been irredeemably compromised. So what that means is we need to reopen the Clinton investigation, and in the least pause the Mueller investigation. Those of you who follow what I've been saying and what Judicial Watch has been saying know that I think the Mueller investigation is constitutionally suspect and should be shut down. It's out of control. And I tell you, this Flynn investigation, or this plea deal that they came up with for General Flynn, I don't believe General Flynn lied. In fact, CNN reported shortly after those FBI interviews, for which he pled guilty to lying at, the FBI had thought he didn't lie at the time. And it was an ambush interview by all accounts. The FBI called him up and said, hey, can we have a meeting? Flynn said, sure, come on over to the White House. He thought they were coming over to talk shop because he had been working with the FBI in his new position as National Security Advisor to the President of the United States. It said they conducted an ambush interview of him, presumably at the direction of Sally Yates, the Obama holdover who was acting Attorney General, who had this preposterous idea that he was violating the Logan Act for talking to Russians and other foreign governments as he was prepping to come into the government for the President of the United States. If I were General Flynn, I'd ask questions about, was there bias in this FBI investigation and the Mueller investigation? Was he told about it? Were his lawyers told about it? I'd throw the whole thing out if I were the court, and certainly someone should be raising it with the court. And now Judicial Watch is asking questions about all of this. We've asked questions, frankly, the texts that this FBI agent sent his paramour are already responsive to a Judicial Watch request for records about the FBI Clinton investigation. But also we've FOIA'd directly the agency about his removal, because it was reported he was removed off of the Mueller investigation a few months ago, back in August. But the public lies was that it was a personnel matter. It was more than that, obviously. And they've ignored our request. In fact, they were stonewalling Congress as well. And I want to know who's responsible for those stonewalls. But this is a real crisis at the Justice Department and FBI. Mueller's investigation is costing, I think, $6.7 million, or in the neighborhood of that. For what? Every dollar spent on a compromised, unethical, and unconstitutional investigation that's out of control is a wasted taxpayer dollar. And it gets worse, because we also received documents from the email account of Sally Yates. Remember the acting Attorney General Obama holdover? So this is what happened. Yates was brought in as acting Attorney General. Huge mistake. She was there 2.5 weeks or so, until Trump had to fire her for refusing to obey for refusing to allow the Justice Department to defend the first version of his so-called travel ban. Really outrageous insubordination. A ban which has been upheld more or less each time it's come before the Supreme Court, despite the left's fanatical attempts to undo it. So what we did was we asked for emails about from her account, her emails from the 2.5 weeks she was acting Attorney General. So we finally gotten some batches. We had to sue for them, as we always do almost. There was an interesting email because there were several emails that were sent to her from Justice Department officials praising her efforts to thwart the President of the United States. Really unlawful efforts, improper efforts, unethical efforts. And one of these emails came from someone called Andrew Weissman. And Mr. Weissman was chief of the criminal section of, I think, criminal fraud section of the Justice Department. He probably still is, but he's been assigned to Mueller's operation. Now, Weissman has got a real history. He's known, I think, as Mueller's mad dog or Mueller's bulldog. He was involved in the Enron investigation and prosecutions of Arthur Anderson that were overturned by 9-0. And all of these outrageous acts by Mueller's team were raiding Manafort's home with guns drawn, and kind of their aggressive tactics have all been tied to Weissman. But Weissman sends an email to Sally Yates. Let me make sure I have it here. And he says, "I am so proud and in awe. Thank you so much. All my deepest respects." This guy is number 2 at Mueller's operation. So we've had the FBI agent who was running the day-to-day operations of the FBI in terms of the Clinton email investigation. He ran that investigation day to day. Thrown off the Mueller team. And of course that act was hidden from us. And now we have strike, I don't know, maybe 56, but now strike 2 in the least, of his deputy praising this Obama holdover for basically breaking all ethical norms at the Justice Department and refusing to defend this lawful travel ban. Now, what Yates should have done if she didn't like what President Trump was asking her to do was to resign. Instead, she directed, and the documents show, she was directing the Justice Department not to defend it. Rank insubordination, unethical for a lawyer in my view. And this person, this top official at the Justice Department that Mueller's relying on, was praising it. So now you want to know why people are calling on Mueller to resign? It's because of Judicial Watch's disclosures. Between that, the FBI revelations, the Tarmac records, people are fed up. And Republicans who have defended Mueller, because what happens is on the Hill is Mueller's a member of the establishment where Mueller much respected is the phrase. Well, he doesn't have much respect anymore. And the FBI, I remember talking to a key staffer on the Hill, and he said, well, the Republican leadership likes the idea of a special counsel because it means they don't have to talk about the Russia investigation. They can say, well, the special counsel's handling it. Well, no more. So I want to know where the oversight is of Mr. Mueller. Because Rod Rosenstein, who's the number 2, because Sessions has recused himself, Rosenstein was the one who appointed him. He's supposed to be making sure Mueller's doing the right thing. But he's failed to do that. And if I were President Trump, I would tell Mr. Rosenstein, you need to remove Mr. Mueller and get this situation under control. Again, Mueller's operation, the special counsel investigation into the Russia collusion allegations, which I don't even know if he's investigating it because he seems to be doing everything but investigating Russia collusion, has been compromised. Something needs to be done. So I referenced the Clinton Lynch Tarmac records. Now this is another outrageous FBI scandal. So we had asked for records about that meeting from both the Justice Department and the FBI last year. In fact, we asked for an IG investigation of the meeting. Still haven't heard from the IG, although I understand they are investigating it. The Justice Department gave us finally, during the Trump administration, we had to sue both the Justice Department and the FBI, which I guess technically is part of the Justice Department. Although if you listen to people like James Comey talk, you would think the FBI is a separate branch of government answerable to no one. But it actually is answerable to the Justice Department. And the Justice Department gave us some talking points that they had concocted last year for the Tarmac meeting, but they redacted them, which was outrageous. So you've got Jeff Sessions' Justice Department redacting talking points used by the corrupt Obama Justice Department to spin that Tarmac meeting. Then the documents also showed there were communications with the FBI about the meeting. Stands to reason. Guess what? We had asked the FBI again for those records, and the FBI had told us they couldn't find any. Huh. Well, guess what? I keep on saying guess what, but the FBI then went back and reopened the FOIA request, and they gave us notice 6 weeks ago they found 29 pages. And then they told us they needed 6 weeks to turn over the 29 pages. And what did the 29 pages show? They show little interest. Actually, there's no evidence the FBI cared one whit about the meeting itself and the corrupt meeting between Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch. Loretta Lynch even admitted to cast a cloud over her investigation, over the Clinton email investigation. Didn't stop her from continuing to be involved, but she at least acknowledged the public concern. And when we get we finally get the 29 pages, which are all of the documents I'm telling you about, by the way, are up on Judicial Watch's website at judicialwatch.org. We can provide links in the feed, and but you can go on the internet and find them. And the documents show that the FBI was more concerned about a whistleblower who told a reporter about the meeting than about the meeting itself. And they supposedly were concerned about security breaches, which is baloney, because what was described was obvious. What was described was that the security, when VIPs like the Attorney General travel, they coordinate with local police. I mean, is that a state secret? Obviously not. So the response from the FBI to this corrupt meeting is to figure out who the whistleblower was who talked about the sketchy nature of the meeting to the Observer news publication. And let me see what it says here. FBI officials write, we need to find the guy, and that they also contacted the Phoenix FBI office in an attempt to stem any further damage. So they were going to go after the whistleblower and continue to cover up information from coming out about the meeting. Were they concerned about the ethics of the meeting? They haven't given us any documents showing they were. This shows you, again, why the FBI, certainly at the leadership levels, can't be trusted. Comey has ruined the FBI, and the new Trump FBI director, Christopher Wray, I haven't seen much of. He's kind of missing in action on these important ethics issues and corruption issues. You know, President Trump tweeted, again, after our appearance on Fox News, that the FBI's reputation or something like that is in tatters. Frankly, I think the president is being charitable. I don't know, forget about whether the Clinton email investigation and the Russia collusion investigation can be redeemed. I don't know if the FBI can be redeemed. Is it too far gone in terms of the leadership corruption and ethical compromises and politicization to be saved? If there were brave souls on the Hill, they'd be talking about issues like that. You know, the FBI is failing the American people on so many issues. And it's a shame that we can't trust the FBI to fairly administer justice. We can't trust them with the Clinton stuff, and we can't trust them with the Trump stuff, because they were protecting Hillary Clinton, and they obviously have it in for President Trump. And it taints the Mueller investigation, because Mueller is a former FBI director. We already know he covered up corruption at the FBI with the stonewalling on the firing of this, the removal of this FBI agent who was an anti-Trumper and a Hillary supporter. So what next? Well, Judicial Watch is just going to continue our lawsuits, trying to find out information about what's going on. We're going to be asking about the dossier. We still are asking about the dossier. We're asking about the unmaskings. We're asking about what Mueller's up to, what his budget is. And certainly the Clinton email investigation, we're in the middle of it. We're still asking for the Clinton emails. So, boy, it's a real crisis at the Justice Department and the FBI. Now, the big media, liberal media, doesn't want you to think about it like that. They want you to think that this is all an attempt to protect President Trump from an investigation into his Russia connections. No, we just want an ethical law enforcement agency, both at the Justice Department and the FBI, and we don't have that now. Good news. We can, as I said before, and you may have heard me say elsewhere, we can build a wall 100 feet high on the border. This is the area of illegal immigration. But if we have sanctuary cities, that wall won't work, or won't work as well as it ought to. Because once you get across the border, you're almost free to roam and live and work. You're gonna take risks to get over the border. And of course, those sanctuary policies, as we've pointed out and others have pointed out, are deadly dangerous. The shooter of Kate Steinle, the illegal immigrant who was released onto the streets thanks to San Francisco sanctuary policy, outrageously was found not guilty of murder by a jury in San Francisco. I haven't even looked closely at that verdict and how the trial was run, but I'm sure it was terribly corrupt. I'm sure it was rigged in a way to make sure that those of us who are concerned about the violence associated with sanctuary city policies and the violence associated with illegal aliens present in the United States wouldn't be able to point to a murder verdict as a supporting point for our argument. So there's been a lot of outrage about that acquittal or the not guilty verdict on the murder. Now, Judicial Watch is doing direct litigation on this, and we have a taxpayer lawsuit against the San Francisco Sheriff's Department. Taxpayers have standing in California to sue government agencies and entities when they spend money for illegal purposes or in support of illegal purposes, such as the sanctuary policy, as we allege. Now, always the trick with these lawsuits are to, I'll warn you, I'm not an attorney, so take this for what it's worth, is to get past the motion to dismiss stage. So you file a lawsuit, and sometimes the other side, oftentimes the other side will file a motion to dismiss, meaning to cut the lawsuit off at the pass before it goes forward anywhere. And that's difficult to overcome sometimes, especially for conservative groups like Judicial Watch, who aren't often fairly treated by the liberal judiciary, especially out in California. Well, we received great news last week because the court in our case ruled that our case can proceed. It survived the motion to dismiss, which means we will get discovery and be able to prove our case, thankfully, to the court that San Francisco's sheriff's, we're suing specifically the Sheriff's Department, and that the policy is illegal and should be stopped. So this is a great victory for the rule of law, in my view. Now, we can cut off funding for these sanctuary cities, which is good. Well, let me tell you something. The money is not enough to have an impact on the cities themselves. They will keep their policies and maybe not even take the money, and they'll still be fine. I mean, it's the government. They don't need the money. You know that. Now, they're going to fight I know these sanctuary states and cities are suing the Trump administration for trying to cut off some money. Believe me, but the money is not significant enough to stop them from doing the policy. Even if they get the money cut off, they're going to still be sanctuary cities. So this is where Judicial Watch is coming in. We're suing the cities directly, in this case San Francisco, to try to stop the policy. So by stopping the policy, we obviously will prevent the waste of taxpayer resources to support illegal activity. But I'm hoping we save lives. We don't need any more Kate Steinleys. You know, I spoke a few weeks ago at the Remembrance Project, and maybe we can post a speech. And the Remembrance Project is a group that brings together the families of people who've lost their family members. The families, let me put it this way, the families of victims of illegal alien crime. People who've died, murdered, raped, killed by drunk drivers, you name it. Sanctuary policies are illegal, dangerous, and deadly, and they need to end. And I am so proud of our legal team. So I get to come on here and talk about all the great work our legal team does. You know, all that litigation on the Andrew McCabe and the FBI and the Tarmac records. All that is because of our legal staff. And it starts with our investigators pushing for information and then looking at it once we get it. So it's a great team here at Judicial Watch. And in this case, we had our legal team, led by Paul Arfanides, who's our litigation director, score a major victory. And now the San Francisco Sheriff's Department is now going to have to answer our questions and try to defend their illegal policy in court. And this is what's great about the American legal system. Little old Judicial Watch can hold the government to account in the court. And they have to answer to us. So it's a great accountability story, and I'm hopeful we win in the long run. It was a significant legal hurdle we overcame. I don't want to overstate it because we still could lose in the end. But it accomplishes much in the way of alerting Americans about the dangers of the sanctuary city policy. And I hope it puts other cities on notice that, hey, Judicial Watch is out there and they may sue us on this sanctuary policy. And I can tell you that they are afraid of Judicial Watch because we've warned them off on a few cities and localities off on these sanctuary city policies, and they've backed off. So it's well worth doing the work. So a lot going on. Thanks for your support, and I'm talking about all the our staff that does all the hard work that I get to talk about. And of course, we wouldn't have staff without your support. So I appreciate everyone out there who is supporting us, those of you Judicial Watch members. And if you're not supporting us, you should. But in the least, You should be finding out about the work we're doing. Read these documents and express your outrage to your members of Congress. Find out what's going on and demand action. Because Judicial Watch is doing all the heavy lifting by itself. Congress is largely AWOL on these issues. There are a few good members. Devin Nunes at the Intelligence Committee in the House is pushing, holding the feet to the fire of holding the Justice Department's feet to the fire. Charles Grassley asked some tough questions in the Senate. But those exceptions almost prove the rule. It's Judicial Watch that is doing this work. The Justice Department isn't doing it. They're letting King Mueller run the Justice Department, practically speaking. I mean, the FBI is on life support ethically. And then, of course, the media is in a get Trump mode, so they don't care about corruption at the FBI. They only care about government corruption for if Trump is somehow behind it. But they don't care about it if his ideological opponents are behind it. So it's up to Judicial Watch to do this independent oversight, and we're going to do it. So thanks for your support, and we'll see you next week.